It's Thursday, the 17th of June, 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, superannuation funds set for big annual returns as the share market hits another record high. Plus, around 2.2 million workers will receive a 2.5% pay rise, but some will have to wait until November to get it. A community-transmitted case of COVID in New South Wales has triggered fears of restrictions being imposed, and zero alcohol beer takes off as mainstream brews stagnate. Our lead story today, the Australian share market hit another record peak yesterday and closed at its highest level ever, despite the mining companies falling as China attempted to put a lid on commodity prices. Investors have now pushed the benchmark index up 12% over the past 6 months. And with 2 weeks to go in the financial year, annual returns for superannuation funds are expected to be 15% plus, potentially outdoing the stellar return of 15.6% 8 years ago, and more than making up for the 0.6% average loss for medium growth funds last year. The Commonwealth Bank rose again yesterday, up 1.3%, and is now the best performing major bank over the past year. It's up more than 50% in that period. Wesfarmers and Woolworths again hit record highs. All three are widely held stocks. The big miners were the laggards yesterday. China has upped its efforts to rein in raw material prices by expanding its oversight of trading by state firms. Beijing also said it would release the nation's reserves of base metals, including copper, aluminium and zinc. The share market is hot, and that's great for super returns. Australians hold $8 trillion worth of property and $3 trillion worth of superannuation. Both are booming, and that's great for the economy. In overseas news, the major indices across Wall Street fell overnight after the US Federal Reserve signalled 2 rate rises in 2023, earlier than previously forecast, to combat rising prices. The Fed also upped its growth forecast for the world's biggest economy to 7% this year. US President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed to resume arms control talks and return ambassadors to each other's capitals after meeting for the first time overnight. Mr. Putin said the two had spoken the same language, but there was no friendship, rather a pragmatic dialogue between the two leaders. And the share price of Coca-Cola dropped yesterday on Wall Street after Cristiano Ronaldo, probably the best-known footballer in the world with 299 million followers on Instagram, pushed aside bottles of Coke in a press conference and encouraged people to drink water. One swipe and $4 billion was wiped from Coke's market cap before it recovered later in the day. Locally, the minimum wage for 2.2 million workers will rise by 2.5%, well above inflation, though some workers in sectors hit hard by the coronavirus crisis won't receive any increase until November 1. The Fair Work Commission raised the minimum rate from $19.84 an hour to $20.33 an hour, taking the minimum weekly wage to $772.60. The economic climate is such that the economy can afford a wage increase for the lowest remunerated. Under the deal, increases won't be paid in the aviation, tourism and hospitality sectors and the fitness sector until November 1. Some retail workers won't receive an increase until September 1. Restrictions in Victoria have been eased with the 25-kilometre household boundary abolished, gyms allowed to reopen, and public gatherings of up to 12 people now permissible. It comes as 5 new community cases were reported yesterday in the state, including a Melbourne nurse who may have worked a shift while infectious. Meanwhile, in New South Wales, a 60-year-old man who transported international flight crews became infected, the state's first community-transmitted case in 40 days. Close contact of the man has also tested positive overnight. Several venues in Sydney's east are now on high alert. The Morrison government's signature superannuation reforms are likely to pass the Senate in time for a 1 July kick-off, after gaining the support of crossbenchers One Nation and Centre Alliance. The Your Future, Your Super legislation includes changes to annual performance tests for super funds, a requirement that spending is motivated by the best financial interests of members, and a stapling mechanism which will allow employees to automatically keep their super fund when switching jobs. The zero alcohol beer segment is growing faster than any other category, according to the boss of Asahi Beverages, Australia's biggest beer business. While the mainstream beer market has stagnated, craft beers are growing at an 8% clip. And zero alcohol beers are expanding at a 30% pace, albeit off a lower base, according to a report in the Financial Review. Carlton Zero and Great Northern Zero are among the most popular brands in the segment. Asahi bought out Carlton and United Breweries a year ago for $16 billion. And toy giant Mattel has honoured former Federal Foreign Minister Julie Bishop with her own Barbie doll. Dressed in deep blue with a shock of blonde hair, Ms. Bishop has been honoured as Barbie's official role model for Australia in 2021. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning. And if you'd like more detail and more stories, search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. We also release a daily interview. Today we're talking to governance and cyber risk expert Courtney Brown about what directors and executives need to do to prepare for a cyber attack. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.